Okay. So here we are in our Q&A part, because we really want this part to be more interactive. It's really, I actually did that once and I'll never do that again. Try to do the teaching on the dragons for a women's retreat all in one sitting, and it was not possible. So I decided this time, if you guys would take the test and you have a question in any of them, then we can go straight into those and answer questions on that. So anybody has one that you would like to talk about?
Maybe, why don't you give us the list of the 13 dragons, so that if anybody on here who has taken it, if they don't have their, or if they haven't taken the quiz, and they can kind of hear a little quick synopsis of what the dragons are.
Okay, well, there is one that is the abandoned, invisible, or insignificant, and it could be any of them or all three of them at once. Flawed or inferior, again, one or both of them, one or the other or both. Anxious, wounded, should and shaming, responsible, special, spoiled or entitled, one or the other or all three of them. Angry, judgmental, grief and loss, death, hopeless and helpless, and ancestral. Those are the 13 that he has. And when you do take the test, it will give you the origins. It will give you, it happens when, and then it'll give you a list of things when something could happen that would make you have that dragon. Triggers and reactions. The only thing that your results don't give you is the strategies and the affirmations of how to tame them, or what are the ants that like to come along and influence, bring negative thoughts into that dragon that is firing into your life because of what just happened.
Mm-hmm. So Ruth said she's got 6 dragons. If Ruth, if you wanted to discuss them, we can do that on this call.
Even if it's just one, and we can go through, because we won't have time to go over all 13, but we can at least, go one by one.
Or Danielle said she had some that if you wanted to
tackle a few.
Mm-hmm. Now's your opportunity to tackle a dragon with the help of Sibby.
Well, okay, so I'll start. The first one is abandoned, invisible, or insignificant dragon. As far as I'm concerned, in my practice, and according to Dr. Daniel, this one pretty much almost everyone has. So I can tackle that one pretty easy. It actually, it's common when your parents were unable or unavailable to you to raise you. If you happen to be in a family that you're either adopted, or you're a foster child, or your parents were always working and somebody else raised you. Even if that person was a really good person to raise you, you're still longing, and you feel in somehow, because children don't understand that they have to work, and they don't understand what does that mean? We know that as we get older, but when you're a child, you don't. All you know is my mom and my dad are not here, or one of them is not here. You may have parents in prison. You may have parents that are missionaries, and they go, travel very often and leave you with a grandparent or an aunt or somebody else. So there is all kinds of people can enter into that one. You may have been a middle child from a large family. I mentioned that one. That was my case, middle child in a large family. Your parents are siblings. And in my case, I also tag right into abandoned, not because my parents abandoned me, but my dad traveled. He was a travel agent for American companies in Venezuela, and he would come to the United States very often, or he had to travel within the country in Venezuela very often. So he would leave on Monday and come back on Friday. So I didn't see him all week long. I don't know where he is. All I know is he's not home. And all I hear is he's at work. He's working. So I would have nightmares where in my nightmares, working, the work was trying to kill him. And I was trying to, save him because work was taking him away from me. So those are things that happen. We don't know how children interpret what they hear and how they take it into their hearts. You can be having parents or siblings where just the word dysfunctional. You could have had a narcissist parent, all of them, or a sick child at home, or you were sick and then you didn't feel like you were taken care of. So, that's another way of getting this dragon. Or one of your parents or siblings was a high achiever or famous, and you may have not been the famous one. You might have been, the one that nobody really cared because the other one was the special one. So, any of those situations could happen to so many people that's why it's one of the most common ones. So people with this dragon can get triggered when you perceive that others are ignoring or belittling you, when others are recognized and you're not, or when you get laid off from work but your colleagues don't. So those are triggers, and of course there's more triggers than that, but that just gives you an idea of, if that ever happens to you, it's like, oh, I see why I feel that way. It's part of that dragon that is breathing fire into my situation. And some people may say, what's the big deal about that? So what if they didn't see you? Well, to them, they don't have that dragon, so they don't see it that way, but you do. So then you think there is something wrong with me. And instead of finding out where is it coming from, so then that you can overcome it, then that's why we're overcomers, because there is a snake that lied in the garden, and that snake, which is also a dragon in Hebrew word, so it's also firing lies to us through our lives. So that is something we have to overcome. And our reactions, of course, can be all kinds of reactions: feeling lonely, worthless, small, and there are things that we need to find strategies to come against it and affirmations to learn how to overcome it. And so strategies is to know your life's purpose, work toward making differences in the life of others. That always helps. Become part of a group like the Rooted Cafe or any other, like a church or a civic group that are doing something. A lot of people become very proactive in different arenas. Or of course, psychotherapy can help. Those are all different strategies. Then the affirmations are: I am loved, I'm unique, I'm significant, I am seen by, and you name the people who see you. Like, I'm seen by my mom, I'm seen by my brother, I'm seen by my best friend, I'm seen. You help your brain to get off that, to put that dragon down, to put that fire off. We always combat any type of fire that a dragon would like to direct at us by something positive, by something good. Every negative has to be replaced by something positive. I am making a difference in the lives of, and then you can name them. So when you ever feel lonely, when you feel abandoned, when you feel alone, when you feel insignificant, you say, well, I'm actually making a difference in so-and-so's life, or in your pet's life. I am actually being seen. Remember when the event with oh my gosh, I just lost her name, in the desert, and she calls the God who sees. What's her name?
Hagar.
America.
Ishmael's mom.
Yeah.
Hagar.
Hagar. Yeah, Hagar. And
Isn't that Ishmael's mom?
she is. I was just saying, no, that I'm not looking for Ishmael. Yes, the mom. Hagar, you're right. So yes, and she calls him because she was feeling unseen. Here I am, the mother of this child, but my mistress doesn't even see me. All she sees is the baby, and she wants to take over when she actually was her servant, so she's not even seeing her in that regard.
And she didn't even have a choice in the matter. If you think about it, it's like,
right. So, but what is it that she calls God when he sees her? The God who sees me. There is a part in all of us, and that's one of the best things we can do with our children is, I see you did that. That was so good. And let them hear that they're being seen. I was raised by children are to be seen or heard. So, and or seen but not heard. But that is the same thing. If you have no voice, and you have not been seen either, even though you say that. So that is something, that is just one dragon. That's why I was saying it's impossible to go through all 13 of them, because unless you tell me exactly, that the idea with this was that you would have your chart in front of you, and then you would say, yeah, in the abandoned, invisible, insignificant, I was that middle child, and I get triggered this way, and my reactions are usually this. How do I overcome that? So then we can have this conversation instead of me teaching you all about that dragon, the origins for everyone in the universe, because that takes so long.
Well, I could say, oh, go ahead, Danielle.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, the should and shaming dragon. I was the child. I was raised as an oldest, but I am sort of a middle. And it was always like, well, you should have done this, or you should have done that, or you had time to do this, or you have time to do that. And I have a really bad habit of overextending myself, because if someone's like, hey, will you help me do this? Like, yeah, of course, no problem. Like, it's just help. And what seems like just help in that moment where I'm not feeling overwhelmed then becomes very overwhelming. So not only is it, I should have said no, it's also, I should keep my promise, or I should do this, or I should be happy that somebody is looking for me for help. I should be happy. Like, so it's not just like, I should have time, or I should manage my time better, or I should be able to do all of the things. It's also kind of in the negative too. So maybe if you want to talk about that.
That is the literal dragon I was just about to say. I was like, the should, guilt, shame one, because I am a middle child, but I'm a more assertive middle child, I guess. I don't know if it has to do with being raised with 3 girls, and if you don't say something, you're lost, And so I don't know, but I have that same, like, I have come out of that in a lot of ways in the last few years of knowing Simi. But before I even knew this was a dragon, just that pool of people pleasing and like, gosh, I should have, whatever you want to say, like, I should have done this or should have done that. And then what you just said, it's like, okay, maybe for once I'll stand up for myself and I'll say no, like I'll say a no, but then that shame or the guilt comes up, and it's like, you can't sit in peace, or like I would struggle to sit in peace with the standing up, right? And then you have to battle that side of it, like, no, you deserve rest too, and that's actually not yours to pick up. And like, I've had to learn to balance, like, find true worth in Christ and in my standing as just a child of God, like finding my worth there, and not anywhere else, that kind of goes back to that codependent tendency of like, I find worth in others needing me. It I feel like that might probably be a tendency with that same dragon, probably. This is just me kind of like thinking through it, but
Mhm. Good,
yeah. So anyway.
good. How about you, Danielle? How do you see that? Or in your case?
No, I definitely see it the same way. It's definitely been a lot easier for me to say no or to set boundaries for myself. But with certain people, I think it's much more difficult because when you've been a certain way and you've been available for so long and you begin to take that availability away, I feel guilty that I've upset because I feel like I'm responsible for their emotions, while I can sit and rationally think and say, like, their reaction to my boundaries is their responsibility, but there is that tug between what is sacrificial love versus what is healthy,
Mhm.
and sometimes it feels like those lines can definitely be blurred. But yes, I think finding value in what other people think about you, because that was something like I was, if I could perform good grades, that was like of high value to my parents. If I could clean the house, if I could make dinner before they got home from work, like those were high value things. So performance was always praised. But me
Mhm.
needing to rest was like, oh, there's no time for rest. Like if you're up, like you got to be productive. It was like hustle culture before it was actually hustle culture. But yeah, so I think for me, when people say, "Can you help me?" It's like, oh, yes. It's like, oh, I'm getting a present. But then when you open the present, you're kind of like, oh, man.
All the strings attached to that present, huh?
And yes, yes. And then, you never want to reject a present that somebody gives you,
Mhm.
but you kind of have to. And yeah, it's just that constant going back and forth for me, really.
And
Yeah.
it's also like, at what point did we start seeing people needing you as a present? You know? And then you get to this place, at least for me, where it's like to receive help was really hard. And it's like, no. Like, this shouldn't be this way. Like, to only be able to slay, give, serve. And then when you actually are broken down and you need the help, you can't receive it because you're always used to that. It's like, and I don't know if that would even go under a different dragon or not,
Yeah.
Simi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You're both attaching some other dragons to that. But that's usually what happens. They
Right.
will come together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So because when you feel like you have to, well, the have to's, you ought to, the should and shaming, and if not, shame on you, that in itself is the dragon, and it brings guilt and it brings shame when you don't do it or you don't do it right. So that one brings that. But the one that you feel like when you're talking about a present, or when I become a present, or how is that is actually a dragon called flawed and inferior. So that will kick in because you feel like, oh wow, I was asked. That means I'm important. It's in, even they abandoned or invisible. Sometimes people feel invisible or they feel insignificant. And when they're asked, then they feel significant because they were asked. So a lot of things can, go in there. Is more than one. That's why there's nothing wrong when you have more than one dragon. It's actually, I would question, and I do when I have people that said, oh, I just have one, or I just have two. Then I'll ask questions about the other ones, and they're, oh yeah, I definitely have that one. Oh yeah, because they don't see how one interacts with the other. And then they realize that, yeah, it is usually more than one, because they're kind of cousins. They all kind of, they're the same family. They all go together somehow. But one of the most important thing, and this is unfortunately our culture, not just the American culture, our Hispanic culture is the same way. The Asian culture is the same way. You know, that there is that you have to, everything is you should, you ought to, or shame on you. You know, that is like put on. It's a society that if you are not, you didn't get an A, you didn't, you know, you, if you don't pass, if you are not the best in the classroom, you know, we have a lot of that in religious circles that can become like, really, if you do not perform in a certain way, you're embarrassing me, so you should do this, because otherwise I look bad as your mother. You know, there is all kinds of ways that that dragon is all over the place.
Mhm.
And one of the things that it is important is to break up with that guilt. So as soon as you feel guilty about something, you need to break up with that boyfriend and say, mm-mm, not anymore. You're not welcome here. I'm over this. I don't need to have this guilt. And then you can always, or things from the past, because you did that, you know, once in your life you did something, and it's kind of like chasing you for the rest of your life. And every time you do something wrong, it just comes back, that old mistake you made. So those are the things, those two things are very important to break up with. The past is the past. You know, you cannot drink spilled milk. No, it's on the floor. It's dirty. Move on. You know, that is something that we do have to. And for those of you that have done the Jacob's ladder with me, you know, that is part of the script. You are breaking the emotional, the toxic emotion from the, from, and for this event in the emotion from the past, now in the present. And that has to be done. We have to constantly take things, and that's part of renewing of our mind, right? We come to the throne of God, and when he says in John 1:9, it says that we confess our sins and he is faithful to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So what is this thing that we just keep, you know, some unrighteous deeds that we've done under rocks, and then we just keep them like pets, and then they come up and they show up, and no. When we have confessed, he comes and cleanses us. So when they want to come out of that rock, you put it back where it belongs. You take it back down. It's like, no, you're in the past. I am not 5 years old anymore. I am not 10 years old anymore. I'm not 33 years old anymore. You know, you just take it back and say, nope, you will not rule over me anymore. It's kind of like when we started that responsibility. I take 100% responsibility that my life is what I want it to be now. I'm not living now the way I used to live before. And that
Yeah.
is, you know, important.
One of the things I've always said, or whatever, in the last so many years, I'm like, I'm not letting that old man resurrect itself. You know, like I'm not, because
Yeah,
that's really what's happening is,
yeah.
if you think about it, if I am a new creation in Messiah,
Mhm,
I am
mhm.
either a new creation or I'm not, you know, and
Exactly.
I either believe that I'm a new creation or I am heavily confused. And so when those tendencies want to rise up, I have to set, like, no, you cannot resurrect yourself and come
Mhm.
alive again. Like,
Yeah,
I am a new person. I am not going back to that old way. So, and that's
yeah,
what's hard
it
about
is.
belief systems, even because really, a lot of believers have not fully grasped and truly believe. I mean, they may say they believe this, but they haven't fully adopted it as a belief system within every fiber of their being. People are still living as though there is still a separation between them and the Messiah. When he says, you and I are one, just as the Father and I are one, and in him we are one. It's like we have to fully really sit and marinate in that oneness and trust this new creation. And from that place of belief and renewed belief system,
Mhm.
can we then tackle these ants, these, you know, automatic negative thoughts and these
Right.
dragons? We realize, no, you don't have authority over me anymore. I actually have authority over you, and we can overcome this. And you also have a grace upon yourself as you're walking into this new way of thinking, because you have this realization that, wow, like I didn't have an awareness of this. And now that I
Yeah.
do, as these things come, I can deal with them. I don't have to tackle everything all at once. By the grace of Messiah,
Mhm.
like, we have time. This is our journey together. This is a part of our walk, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. And one of the saddest part, and this will tell you how frequent this dragon is. This is where pornography, addictions, just secret behaviors, overeating or undereating, throwing up, bulimia, and all that, come from. It comes from this, where you have been made to believe that you're either this or else, and then you don't know, you can't cope with that, and you have to somehow appease yourself because you are overwhelmed by not being everything that you should be, or you've been shamed over. That what happens is then you create all these addictions and the secret behaviors to appease you. And then because it's secret, then it becomes something that you don't want anybody to know. And then you have a hard time, overcoming. Now, one of the things that helps is also when you do decide that you want to do something and somebody has asked you to do something, and it's like, okay, I don't have to do that, or I, should do that. I want to do that, or this fits my goals to do this. So let me pray about it and see if this fits my goals for my life right now. If we can change our verbiage, then our brain sees that request differently. And then you don't feel like you ought to respond yes, and you should say yes. Otherwise, there's something wrong with you, because she's asking you, what's wrong with you that you're not saying no? So that helps. You ask yourself, do I really want to do this? And it may be no, and it may be something that we should. Here I go, shoot, right? That it would be good for us to say yes to, but we are like, no, 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 I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to be in the spotlight. I don't want to be responsible for that. I don't want to be, all kinds of excuses that we may have. But what if that's what the Father is doing? So it's really more up to asking the Father and say, do you have me doing this right now? Is this something that goes right along with the training that you are taking me through to be the perfect you in this world, that shape that only you fit in that huge puzzle? Is this going to shape me to fit better into your purposes? So those are the kind of things that would be, important for us to work with. And affirmations, as I'm not my past. The things that I did in my past, that's not who I am. This is who I am, and this is where I'm going. And that is my past, and it's gone, is done away with. It's not coming back. Like you said, don't let it resurrect. So those affirmations are important, and breaking with that guilt and saying, no, you will not have a place in me, because the Father doesn't do things, things don't present in our life, situations don't come about so that we feel guilty about them. He is teaching us. And the other thing is to, you're a work in progress. I'm not done. He says in Philippians 1:6, right? That he who started the work in me, he will complete it until I see him, until the day of Christ, whether either that day comes and I'm alive, or I go to him until that day comes. One way or another, he is finishing that. So that means I'm not done. So what if we're not perfect? What if we don't do everything right? We're human, and that is part of our journey. And he's completing us. He's not done with us yet. As long as we see each other and we're alive, he's not done with us yet. So it's important that we say, yeah, I'm not, I do still make mistakes, and I'm still learning. I'm a work in progress. It is finished, but that doesn't mean that in this timeline, I'm done yet. You know, I'm still in the oven. I'm not edible yet. And it's okay with that. We need to be okay with that. Give ourselves permission to be okay with that.
Well, that's perfect to me because we're actually at our 30-minute mark for the second.
Hey,
Perfect.
okay.
Well,
Ellen,
are we planning on doing an after party for some of those here? Maybe they'll want to talk on the non-recording part, and if not, we can just hop off.
Okay, we can do that, and feel free, Danielle. You can stop the recording now, and if you need to move on, we can keep it for a little bit longer, and then